Hello and welcome to a very special episode of a review today. Today I'm reviewing one of my, if not my favorite Iris fragrance in my collection. This is called Iris Altesse by Dana and Flemming, perfumed by Antoine Lie, released in 2025. Let's start off by talking about the packaging and the presentation. Then I will move on to what it smells like. Then I will give you a discussion on the performance of this fragrance, and then we'll finish up with my final thoughts. All right, first of all, when you purchase this fragrance, it's a numbered edition. So each of them will have a handwritten numbered seal that you can cut through or otherwise open. And then you will pull up on this top. Be careful, maybe the bottle has come loose in shipping, okay? So don't open it, at an angle, open it straight. And inside you will find, like a little pedestal, the fragrance, 2 ml of the Iris essence in alcohol, and a piece of Iris rhizome, like a cut and dried piece of the rhizome of whatever particular variety of Iris is in this fragrance, okay? Because that's the sort of the philosophy here, that each of these three Dana and Flemming fragrances have one particular variety of Iris that is used inside at a, relatively speaking, very high dosage. In this case of Iris Altesse, it is the Iris Pallida, so that is this sort of lighter colored purple iris that is typical for perfumery, especially French perfumery. And it is used at 2.6% within the formula. The concentration, I think, is eau de parfum around 20% oil in the fragrance. The cap is magnetic. It's a very strong magnet, so you can easily pick it up. You don't have to worry about the fragrance dropping. There's a lasered logo on top, and then your year, because there's one batch per year depending on how much Iris material they have available, and the number of the bottle that matches the one on the back, on the box. Other than that, it's a fairly simple bottle. There's a nice pressurized atomizer, which I will show you once I apply the fragrance. I have it, I'm wearing it today, but I will apply a fresh spray as we start talking about it. So much for the packaging. The good part about having this Iris essence in alcohol, pure Iris essence, is that you can actually spray the fragrance on one side and have the essence on the other side, perhaps, and you can go back and forth and you can identify what the actual Iris smells like and how it is used in each of these fragrances, right? These are the other two by this brand. And another thing to say is that the materials used in this fragrance are all from the Atelier Francais de Matieres. So those are the people behind Les Indemodables, Les Abstraits, this is Bellam, and some other fragrances like Iris and so on. Okay, let's go right into talking about what this smells like. So you can see the color here, it's a light pink, yellowish. And now I will show you the atomizer. I hope that was visible. It's nice and pressurized, very fine mist. And in the opening, it is one of the most stunning, natural smelling opening. Altesse, I think the working was Jardin, so it was supposed to be very natural, like a garden, okay? Very floral, very green. And in the opening you get all that. So the notes in the opening mainly that you pick up on is the iris, okay? That's the big one, I'll get to that right away. The galbanum, there's a touch of galbanum, and the pink pepper CO2. And that results in this super powdery, fresh, there's also some bergamot, I should say, that also gives this freshness, green, and extremely complex and intriguing. Like immediately it has you in your, like it has your attention right away. It smells so natural, so bright. There's this light spicy fruitiness from the pink pepper. Very fresh. This bergamot is like super clean. It's not a smoky bergamot. The galbanum is handled very lightly, so there's this sort of slightly green, powdery, crunchy thing, but this is not as much galbanum as to the point where it becomes like smelling like bell pepper. So this stops short of smelling like bell pepper. it's more of a leafy, really saturated green galbanum here. And really galbanum has some powdery facets as well that then work with this iris. And this Iris Pallida here is absolutely gorgeous. It's such a noble material. It smells extremely luxurious. It has this beautiful powdery texture. It has all this complexity in the opening. You notice that this is not full of violets or ionones. This is really the pure powderiness from the iris together with the galbanum in here. And it gives you everything from the Iris Pallida. It gives you chalkiness, it gives you chocolate, it gives you this woody green facet, it gives you something slightly violety floral, of course. It gives you a woody facet, it gives you something very slightly rooty, vetiver. But I get a lot of this sort of makeup-y powdery facet that's slightly waxy as well as this chocolate thing. And it wants to go in a soapy direction, okay? There is this sort of slightly powdered soap feel that comes from the iris here, which is then balanced by the tartness of a cassis. So there's a big dose to my nose of cassis, which has this sort of tart green, slightly fruity, slightly almost, I don't want to go as far as to say animalic, but it's kind of, it's not, it's not scrub clean. That's what I want to say, okay? And it counteracts the soapiness of the iris itself. And that's sort of this opening that you get right away, and you get so much iris, so much iris. And it's really lush, and the iris wants to be powdery and dry, but it's counteracted by a clever use of florals. So there's 3 types of florals in there as well that also creates this pink color, okay? These floral absolutes are from jasmine, orange blossom, and tuberose. And at this point I would say that they are very subtly used, okay? And then the main floral that I do get is the orange blossom. That's the most prominent one of the 3. And then supporting that is the jasmine, and then at the final place is the tuberose, okay? Again, these 3 florals, they help with a touch of indole, okay? There's a tiny amount of indolic feel in those florals. They do lean clean, but there's just a hint of something sexy in there, which makes the soapiness not be something like the Prada Infusion d'Iris, which is just purely soapy, okay? There's a little bit more going on in here, a little bit more depth because of all this natural floral material. And it also lifts this into like an airy feel. This is an extremely expansive, airy, cooling type of fragrance, okay? This is a very cool, out of the 3 iris fragrances from Dana and Flemming, this is the coolest one. It almost has a touch of something minty or like cold air, maybe like a dewy morning air, sort of that smell, going through the grass, carrying some floral notes from this sort of jasmine orange blossom thing. The orange blossom here is very soft. Okay, the orange blossom here does not add to the waxiness. The waxiness to my nose comes purely from the iris. The jasmine here is beautiful, very airy, fluffy. Has a hint of something fruity as well, but it's not extremely prominent, okay? Don't think of this as a jasmine fragrance or a tuberose fragrance. Again, the tuberose here as well, you're not gonna get this classic tuberose coconutty feel. It's not particularly creamy either, this fragrance. It really leans more crunchy, I want to say, powdery, crunchy, sort of this satin-like texture, this very flowy, semi-transparent satin garment that flows in the wind, sort of this texture. So the tuberose here really has that sort of green facet that links in with the galbanum and the iris itself, and it provides just a little bit more of this natural eucalyptusy freshness that is part of the tuberose itself. And finally, you're getting into the base, and the base here is really a big dose of patchouli, and it's the clean patchouli, I think from Altesse or something that the Atelier Francais de Matieres has. So this is not a vintage type of patchouli. This is really clean, nice leafy, also slightly fruity type of patchouli. It has almost no chocolatey facet itself. There's just a very light hint of it. The chocolatey facets here really come from the iris to my nose. And this patchouli is mainly really like this leafy, gardeny, lightly earthy, but not super earthy. Because it's so clean, it almost has more of a woody feel here. It's also not particularly peppery. It really smells like nature. I mean, it really smells like it has body, but it's not this rough sort of patchouli. And this is, you know, where you go through this sort of big, bright, beautiful, fresh, stunning opening with this blast of powder that then moves into this more airy, floral heart and then dries down to this sort of more subdued, more soapy, waxy, patchouli, lightly chocolatey, lightly suede in fact, dry down. And this is this whole journey of this fragrance. And that brings us neatly into the performance and longevity that I think a lot of people care about. So this is a fairly highly concentrated fragrance, but it's not a very dense wear. Okay, so this fragrance does not wear in a way that you're constantly aware of its presence. It's quite diffusive. I think personally I do get a good amount of performance from this. I think it's very fair. I want to say, especially when you don't spray it close to your nose, where you go nose blind, but if you spray it on your arms, on your sleeves, maybe a little bit on your lower part of the shirt, or your sleeves of the shirt, then you will get a whole day's wear out of this, but a subtle type of wear. So it's a subtle, you know, ghostly feel around you that follows you. I think in the opening, the first hour is fairly present, especially because of that floral heart that you really get quite a lot of. But then later on, it's just more whiffs here and there, right? So I do get detectable longevity on skin. So when I bring my nose up to it for basically 10 to 12 hours, I mean, really there's a lot of iris and patchouli in there that stays on the skin for a long time. But I think they have handled the aroma chemicals so lightly that the diffusion kind of really teeters off around the 6 to 8 hour mark, where you stop being able to detect it at further away than maybe 50 centimeters. Whereas in the beginning, right, you do leave a trail, and it's, like I said, this sort of transparent trail. So it's not a very dense wear. I think the Arôme Intense, for example, is very dense. Even Bellam or Iris Pallida, they're way denser fragrances because they also have quite a lot of like vanilla and ambery woody type of materials or musky materials in there. Whereas I don't get as much musk, amber woody, no vanilla-like materials in the Iris Altesse, which really is that sort of natural smell. So the majority, I think, of the ingredients in here are natural to my knowledge, and that's also how it wears. So if you're perhaps familiar with Nila Vermeer fragrances, it wears similarly to that. But I think of the three fragrances, it definitely is one of the better performers, maybe even as good as Trousseau, with Pulsar slightly lagging behind, if you want that sort of reference point. Okay, I think I've hit on all the major points. I love this fragrance. This is my favorite of these three. This is one of my favorite iris fragrances. It's a beautiful green, natural, floral iris interpretation. I think it holds up well to all types of iris fragrances, and as long as you're not looking for the most potent, dense, super present type of wear, then this would be something to definitely consider. I am happy to wear not too much of this. Okay, I think it's great with 4 to 5 sprays. Like I said, I want to spray my arms, I want to spray my sleeves, so maybe 1 spray per arm, 1 spray per sleeve, and I'm very happy to have this fragrance with me for my day of working. Yeah, the only downside I would say is probably the price. So considering that it's a 50 ml bottle and priced at 320 euros, it is very pricey. So really, this is for those people that truly want to experience natural iris. They love floral fragrances, they love green fragrances, they don't like heavy use of synthetics, and they're interested in this sort of small brand ethos. Okay, those are the people that I would definitely recommend trying this fragrance. And another note, so there's just been a release of the new batch, the 2026 batch. So there will be 1 batch per year. They have increased the number of bottles per fragrance slightly for 2026. But I can promise you that I've smelled the new fragrances, so the new batch, and they're just as good as the old ones, or even slightly improved. Okay, so you are not getting any worse quality They have not changed the formula from 2025 to 2026. It's a new batch of Iris production, and I think the new batch smells either just as good, the Iris Altesse I think is quite close between 2025 and 2026, or slightly improved for the other ones. So don't worry about that. They have a discovery set available, but I think it doesn't ship everywhere, so be advised that you have to check if the discovery set is available for you. Otherwise, they have stockists around the world, so hopefully you will be able to try this fragrance. And let me know what you think in the comments. So there you go. There's my long-awaited 1-year owner review. I have got a solid dent for my personal usage of fragrance in this fragrance. I think that is a fairly solid dent, and I have worn this a lot. It's a fragrance I love wearing, and it's a fragrance I love showing to you guys. Thank you so much for watching. Until next time, please be safe, be kind to each other, and be kind to yourselves as well. Bye bye.